Hey everyone, I'm Pastor Jay and welcome to Simple Church Online. Whether you missed last Sunday, you're checking us out for the first time, or maybe even watching out of state, we're so glad that you're a part of our community. And we're praying today that as you watch, God would use this to bless your life. Enjoy the message.
Welcome to Simple Church. It's great to have you. I hope you've had a good start to your new year. I hope you enjoyed the snow. Who enjoys the snow? Like I do, like I want to. I didn't go sledding this time, but looked like if you're in the Berry Hill area, it looked like somebody went sledding with their truck right into that ditch. But I didn't do that, but I like a good snow. I hear if you're reading Facebook weathermen, we might have another shot at some snow this week. And I mean, they're always so right and so on point and get it all there. So I can only imagine that it's just going to be a huge storm. And so I don't say my H's, so I'm sorry. I get myself caught because I said huge and I don't say the H, and I apologize for that. If you don't know who I am, my name is Zack. I'm the kids pastor here, interim kids pastor, longest running interim of all time. I also work for the Department of Human Services, and that's my full-time job, and that's the job I just wake up for every day and just say, please, 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 nothing go crazy today. And so, and sometimes those prayers are answered. I'm actually on call this next week for like 7 days in a row. It's wonderful. So be praying for me as we deal with that. As we start the new year, people make New Year's resolutions. What is today, the 12th? People make New Year's resolutions. They make, like, I'm on a 15-year run of losing weight resolution. I just restart it the next year. Just a few weeks ago, I went to my doctor, and he helped me get ready for my new year. He started telling me, just for my yearly physical of all the things. He's like, your muscle mass looks good. It looks like your heart's good. It looks like you're doing good, but you might be a little overly nourished, were his words. And I was just like, well, thank you. I'm doing something good and above and beyond. I really appreciate the encouragement, Doc. I'll be back in a couple of weeks to get some more encouragement. So, but we make New Year's resolutions, right? I mean, I don't know what your resolution was. Normally, a lot of them are the same. Lose weight, work out, stay off of Facebook, stay off of, get more time with Jesus, spend more time with Him. All of those are things. And then there's also people have words for the year. Like my word for the year is courage, or whatever they'll say, and they'll say that God gave them that, which is all wonderful things to have, and we should always be looking forward to things. But I think another good thing to have in your life is a mantra. A mantra is like a statement or slogan that's repeated frequently. One of the first ones I remember was a baseball team, and they said 25 guys pulling on the same rope. That was their mantra. That was their team slogan. That's what they lived by. The finish line is closer than you think. Those are some. Strength in numbers. Those are some mantras. We have some mantras here at church. We have, keep it simple, or just Jesus. They're written right there on the wall, or as you can see on the back wall as you leave, there's Chase the Lion. Those are all mantras in our life that we can have, that we can speak, that can come out of our hearts, and that you try to live and you try to put those in to practice. And so today I would like to share with you a mantra that it's not my mantra. It comes straight from God's Word. And as you look forward into 2024 and 2025, because as most of you know, when you make resolutions or when you make words for the year, you struggle with those things. The enemy attacks you and you want to stop. And so I think the more you can do, the more things you can come up with, the more ways you can do that, the better. I mean, there's a commercial out right now. Have you guys seen the commercial that says it's like the second Friday of the year is called Quit Friday? It's when we start our New Year's resolutions, and we quit. Well, if we have these mantras, if we have the mantra of I'm going to keep it simple, I'm going to chase the lion, I'm going to just Jesus, or as we say in kids' church, make much of Jesus every day for these kids, or making it the best hour of every kid's week. Those are the things that we say, and those are mantras that help you live by, and they're catchy phrases. And so today I want to speak to you about a mantra that comes straight from the Bible that I would like to live out myself, and it's like a biblical metaphor. We see it in the Bible, but it's something that we can live out. And I would like the words to be empty the jar. Empty the jar. That's what a metaphor for our life, not just New Year's resolution, not just January, but February, March, April, all the way through every day, and if you live by that. And so there's some great stories in the Bible that you can get these metaphors from, these things that can help happen. And Luke chapter 7 is where we will be today. And great stories always have me wanting to place myself right there in the story as one of the characters, and this is one of those. Which character am I? Where do I play? And I think in today's story, we're going to find ourselves, as a lot of us play in both seats a lot of the times. But I would say we probably tend to find ourselves more into one place. This story deals with manners and at a formal setting. And so before we get started, I would like you guys to take a quiz to see how you guys are doing on your formal dinner. As you can tell, I go to a lot of formal dinners. I'm a master at formal dinners. And so the first question is going to come up here on the screen. It's going to say, when should you start eating the main course at a formal dinner? After the hostess is seated, after the hostess has lifted their fork, after 3 or 4 people are served, or as soon as humanly possible. I live by the philosophy of D, but what do you guys think the answer is? Huh? B. The answer is actually not B, it is C. If you look on the interwebs, it's after 3 or 4 people are served. And if you go to like an Archer family, when I go with my dad and stuff, I don't know if we've ever eaten lunch with my mamaw. Like my kids, because she's always serving and we're all done and we're taking our plates back, and now she's carrying her lunch in because we live by this. But that's, if you don't like it, just take it up with the interwebs. That's the rule. I know you thought it was B. Here's another one. How are you to pass things like the bread basket, butter, and etc. to be passed? Are they passed clockwise, counterclockwise, it doesn't matter, or across the table? Clockwise. You pass them to your right, pass them to your right. It actually says you can ask the person to your left if they would like to start first, is the polite thing to do, so you're not the one that starts. But if you're like me, bread, overly nourished, you see bread, that goes into that. You like that, so you like pass those around. Okay, the next question, let's see how you do on this one. When you have finished, where should you place your napkin? On top of your plate, on your chair behind you, to the right of your plate, or to the left of your plate? On the plate? Again, you're wrong. It's actually to the left of the plate, loosely folded to the left of your plate. That lets the person know that you are done eating your meal. My napkin's on the ground because I haven't used it, and so. And number 4, what do you do when the person across from you has food stuck in their teeth? All right. Do you A, stare at it to make them aware, like just eye contact, prick between your own teeth, just the action, or are you saving some for me? Like, what's the answer? The answer is actually none of those. You just let them go, and it ain't none of your business, all right? So you just let them be. But every culture has its own rules for this kind of setting. There are all kinds of different ways that we do in culture. Our culture has rules, and in today's Bible story, this culture had some rules for what was to be done at this dinner that was taking place. And what we're going to find out today is there were a lot of bad manners taking place. Jesus is eating at the house of Simon the Pharisee, and Simon is breaking a lot of rules. Now, Simon was a Pharisee. He was the religious. He was the one that was in church every Sunday. He didn't miss. And he was in church on, like if you remember when I was a kid, you have Sunday church, Sunday night church, Wednesday night church, and then every now and then throw in a prayer service. He was at all of those. All right, he was the one to make sure all of that. That was him. He made sure all the rules were to be followed. He was the first to point out when people didn't. And Simon is breaking a lot of rules here, and it's not because he does not know them or his mother didn't raise him right. That's not the issue. Simon is disrespectful and does not honor Jesus. But he quickly gets a lesson from a woman who was not invited to this party. So I'm going to read to you from Luke chapter 7. I'm going to read you the whole story, and then we will talk about it. Luke chapter 7, verse 36 says, "Now one of the Pharisees," there's Simon, "invited Jesus to have dinner with him. So he went to the Pharisee's home and reclined at the table. When a woman who had lived a sinful life in that town learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, she brought an alabaster jar of perfume, and as she stood behind him at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. When the Pharisee who had invited them saw this, he said to himself, 'If this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner.' Jesus answered him, 'Simon, I have something to tell you.' 'Tell me, teacher,' he said. 'Two men owed money to a certain moneylender. One owed him 500 denarii and the other 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back, so he canceled the debts of both. Now which of them will love him more?' Simon replied, 'I suppose the one who had the bigger debt canceled.' 'You have judged correctly,' Jesus said. Then he turned toward the woman and said, 'Simon, do you see this woman? I came into your house. You did not give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman from the time I entered has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. Therefore I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, for she loved much. But he who has been forgiven little loves little.'" So Jesus was invited to this party. He had spoke in town that day. The head rabbi, Pharisee of the town, is always going to invite a visiting rabbi over to his house. And so he does. He invites, Simon invites Jesus over to his house. And it was customary when you invite somebody over to your house to welcome someone of equal status, you would kiss them on the cheek if they were equal. If they were someone of honor, you would kiss their hand. And if you really, really, really wanted to honor them, you would put some oil, a dab of oil on their head. And you would also, you might not do it, but if you were to honor them, you would wash their feet as they got into your house. And if you didn't do it, the least you would do is you would have a servant in your home wash the feet of the guest. And none of this happened. None of it. Jesus is there. He's there, and he is just another person. Simon is just doing this out of duty. He's just checking a box. This is just another person to him. This is just another time. He's just doing his job. It's almost like it just really didn't matter. But it's just another check on Simon's list to show everyone that I'm the perfect Pharisee. How often are we that person who just checks a box? Come to church, it's what I'm supposed to do. If I come to church today, maybe my wife won't say anything to me this afternoon. If I come to church today, maybe that will get me a closer seat in heaven. I don't know, but we do these things out of order, and sometimes, and not sometimes, oftentimes, that's what church and ministry and the worship of Jesus becomes. I mean, just think of the irony here with Simon. Simon went to rabbinical school. By the age of 12, he had the first 5 books of the Bible memorized. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And as we're talking about making New Year's resolutions, who in here's ever made a resolution of reading the Bible through in a year? Right? Where do you get? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, I'm out, That's how it works. It's like, whoa, I'm done. He had those memorized. By the age of 14, he had the entire Old Testament memorized. So we have this man who is sitting there, who has invited a guest to his house, who has over 300 prophecies of the coming Savior memorized in his head, and the Savior is sitting across the table from him, and he is missing out. He doesn't even notice. And there you go, you got a Savior with his feet unwashed, his cheek unkissed, and his head unanointed, sitting at the table with a person who was doing it the right way. Right? And that's where we find him. There. And when you come into a place in this culture, a lot of times they would eat outside. They would have like a courtyard. And so when they would happen, this courtyard, they would come and the people would recline around the tables. They don't sit at the table like we do. They would recline, maybe have like a little pillow in their elbow, and they'd be laying down on the table and they'd be chatting and talking. And so this is where we find, and this is where the woman steps in to the story. But before we move to the woman, just think of it again. Jesus was sitting across from the table, and this guy was so caught up in his goodness that he couldn't even see him. How often is that us? We strive to do what's right. God, I come to church. God, how can this be happening to me? All this, I do all this good. I do all of that. And this happens not just in this time, it happens today. And it's probably happening here in this room today. People are just checking a box. That's what Jesus is to you. We want the benefits of Jesus' presence, but we want to keep him at arm's length. Because we want to think somewhere in our heart we're good enough. And we've got it all together. And so now a woman steps into the story. And imagine what happens. I mean, you guys already know the culture of women. In that culture, men were the heads and everything. And so there wasn't any women sitting around that table. They're not invited. But because Jesus had taught, Jesus had started to become very popular. Jesus had done miracles. When Jesus would go eat, the word would spread, and people around the town, people that had heard his message, people that had heard him speak earlier in the day, they would come and they would gather around and watch these people eat because they were excited to see Jesus. Now, the person at the table wasn't excited to see Jesus, but the people on the outside, they knew they wanted to hear whatever that story was that he was telling, and they felt good. And that's where this woman steps in the story. And it says this woman was a sinful woman. And it wasn't meaning that she was just sinned. It means her life was sin. That's what the word in this was. Her life was a sinful life. She did sin for a living. She was a prostitute, most likely. And those men knew who she was. Everyone knew who she was when she came in. The tension in the room begins to grow. Some glared like, how in the world would somebody like this come? Some looked down in shame. Some were probably nervous. Because not only did they know who she was, she knew who they were. And they thought maybe she's coming here to talk. But Jesus had just finished, and so he probably recognizes this woman as she boldly steps into the room. The crowd is now quiet. There's no chattering on the outside because this is not supposed to be happening. And she had just heard Jesus teach. We don't know what Jesus taught on that day. Jesus would preach several messages. But there is kind of a time frame that you can look on and you can find, and so many of the Bible scholars actually believe that maybe he had just taught his lesson from Matthew chapter 11. And that chapter ends with the famous verse that says, "Come unto me, all ye who are weary and heavy laden. I will give you," what will he give you? Rest. Now imagine this woman, all her life, all she had ever done is give. She gave herself to men, and that's what she did. And now she's standing in this crowd, hearing Jesus speak, Jesus has probably caught eyes with this woman because Jesus was personal, and he took his place, and he sees this woman, and tears are beginning to well up in her eyes because all she has ever been requested from men is to give, give, give. And now Jesus speaks some sort of words, and I will take the leniency to go there and say that he said that, and her heart was moved. You mean there's somebody that wants to give me rest? All I'm doing is chasing after, making people happy, trying to do that, make a living, make sure people have this. That's all I'm doing, and I know I'm not supposed to be doing this. I know I'm not doing right. I know that's not what I'm supposed to do, but it's all I know how to do. It's all I can do, so I just continually give myself away. And now there's a man standing in front of me, and he's not saying he wants to take from me. He wants to give me something. He wants to give me rest. Man, I need rest. Can you imagine her life? She needs it. She wants it. She is there, and she is calling out. So it moved her so much that she was willing to walk past all the people, walk through all the staring eyes, walk through all the people gasping, walk through the people that probably tried to stop her. She walked right on in to Jesus because her heart was moved by grace. And she experienced it. So she gets in there at Jesus' feet, and she's crying and she's weeping because she's meeting somebody again that's asking to give her something and not take from her. And she begins to cry, and I imagine when she's crying, she looks down and she notices that there's dirt streaks on Jesus' feet. Oh man, his feet haven't been washed. So she lets down her hair, which in that culture is something you would only do in front of your husband, and it was actually grounds for divorce. And so she did. She let down her hair, and she begins to weep, and she takes her hair and she washes the feet of her Savior, and she washes them with her tears, and she dries them with her hair, and then she begins to kiss the feet, and then she takes her alabaster jar, which she needed for her job. She would use it 1 drop a day, however many times a day, daily. Alabaster was very expensive. Many people said it was probably a year's wages cost. This was very needed. And she didn't take just 1 drop. She emptied her jar on the feet of Jesus. This was risky. The people were probably trying to stop her. The men were now probably like, whoa, what do we got going here? What's going on? Was it reckless? Absolutely. I don't think she went there that day knowing what she was going to do. Her heart was just moved because Jesus said, I got something to give. And it was exactly what she needed. And Jesus met her in those spots. Was it inappropriate? Definitely. Did Jesus love it? Yeah. I think he did. Let me ask you, when was the last time you had a moment like this for Jesus? Your heart was really moved. You weren't just checking a box. You were wiping his feet because he's been so good to you. When's the last time? We can come into church and we can get caught up in everything that's going on around us that we don't see what's going on in us, and we can get lost in all of that. And emptying the jar is when you say, everything I have is yours. Everything that woman had was his that day. She held nothing back. Maybe you're the kind that sat in church and you see people get a little excited about worship and they raise their hand and they get excited about Jesus, and you're like, whoa, I'm glad that's not me. I'm going to stand here and be quiet and I'm not going to get excited. It's okay to do that at football games for teams, but it's not okay to do that for Jesus, right? Maybe that's you. Maybe you just get lost in the things that are going on in your life that you forget all the good that Jesus has done for you. And so you don't know how to empty the jar. But that woman did. Because something Jesus said. And let me tell you, the same promise, whatever it was, that Jesus said to her is true for you. And emptying the jar is it can be summed up in like two phrases: extravagant worship and extreme giving. That's where emptying your jar is. It's kind of like, I'll use an example. It's kind of like when somebody needs help around church. There's always those people that help, right? There's like, we can say the Gladsons, right? That's emptying your jar. There's not a time they're not going to step up and help. There's emptying your jars when you're sitting at home and you go on a mission trip, right, Jeff? And you go see some kids in Africa and it moves your heart. And so you choose to give up everything and move to Africa. Those are things that are emptying your jar. Emptying your jar is opening your home to foster children, letting them stay when they're in the worst time of their life. No matter what their behaviors are, no matter what their struggles are, it's opening your home to those people. That is what emptying the jar is. Emptying the jar is knowing you have $500 to spend on something and you choose to spend it on helping somebody get closer to Jesus or see the hands and feet of Jesus. It's all of those things. That is what it was, and that is what this woman did. But how often do we put lids on our jars? Or our jars are just empty because we haven't let Jesus fill them. Simon did. His world was wrapped around what he could do for God. That's what his world was wrapped around. Make sure he read the right scriptures, went to the right church, said the right things, talked to the right people. That's what he made sure. That was his whole life. And maybe that's where we get caught up. That's what church just kind of leads you towards. Church is kind of like, let's go into church and be the best person and the best version of me I can be, and let's go in here. And that's where he was today. And so I'll go back right here in 7:39. So when the Pharisee who invited Jesus saw this, now listen to this, it said, he said to himself. You know, when you talk to yourself like in your head and you say things, like he didn't say this out loud. He just said this to himself. He said, if this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is. He is a sinner. So in his head, he's having that judgmental talk. He's not even saying it out loud. But Jesus answered him. Jesus knew what he was saying in his head. Jesus knows everything. Jesus answered him and said, Simon, I have something to tell you. Tell me, teacher. He said, 2 men owed money to a certain money lender. One owed him 500 denarii, the other 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back. So he canceled the debts of both. Now which of them will love him more? To be clear, the point of this is not that the woman needs to be forgiven of a lot and the Pharisee needs to be forgiven of a little. That's not what Jesus is saying here. No, both are in great need of forgiveness. One tried to find security and happiness apart from God in prostitution and the love of men and the intimacy of somebody in their life. The other thought he could win God's approval by showing how much better he was than everyone else. Both rejected God in their own way, and both needed to be forgiven. Her advantage is she realizes it, and he does not. Which is why she loves Jesus passionately, and he doesn't. How often is that in our lives? Maybe you're looking around at all that's happening and you're putting a lid on your jar. I mean, we were talking this morning of all the bad things that just seem to be happening. You got the fires in California that are terrible, and we had a funeral in this church this week that was terribly sad, and we lost a very good young man. And maybe you're living a life where you wake up every day and you go to a job that you're just like, this is not what I want to do. Maybe you've gone through life and you've just had a bad year. Every diagnosis you get just seems to be another hit. Maybe those are the things. So you get yourself caught up, and you get yourself caught up looking at the things that are going on around you, and your jar just empties. And maybe you have forgotten how good he has been Isn't that what happens often? We can focus on the things. I mean, I could tell story of story. I mean, the last few years have been just one hit after another. And in those moments, we can get ourselves caught looking at how we deserve our life to be better than what's going on in us and around us. And we can forget to focus on how good God has been. We can see the things that haven't been right, and we cannot see the things that are. And maybe that's you today. I can't read my words now. Apologize. Maybe you have forgotten how good He has been to you and your jar is empty. We need to have a real experience with grace because it's the most transforming power on the planet. Some of you feel something is missing in your spiritual life and you lack passion, or you feel spiritually dry. You don't feel close to God anymore. Some of you are just struggling with life and you just don't know what to do. I show you that losing touch with grace is the root of that. If you want to know why you're dry, it's because you've forgotten of God's grace. You start to become Simon and you're like, I deserve this, I deserve that, I deserve everything to be perfect. My house should be like this, my family should be like this, my job should be like this. Thank you, God, because I found you one day and I love you and I've done all these things. This is what I deserve. And we forget to have a daily experience with the love and grace of Jesus. And we struggle to give extravagant worship and extreme generosity because we do this every day. We get caught up on ourselves, but if we take the focus off of ourselves and we put the focus on Jesus and His words towards us, our only response in that situation is to empty the jar. The same words, the same promise that woman heard from Jesus is for you today. And we can go to that same verse in Matthew chapter 11. Come to me, all ye who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Come to me, all ye who are labeled by your sin, by your divorce, by your anxiety. Come to me, all ye who have lost someone. Come to me, all ye who are lonely. Come to me, all ye who don't know what to do. Come to me who just can't even get up today off of your bed. Come to me who want to just sleep and stay away. Come to me, all ye who are worried. Come to me who are angry at me. Come to me that are doubting. Come to me, all ye, and I will give you exactly what you need. Rest. And if you wake up every day and tell yourself those words, and instead of waking up every day and looking at all the things that could be that way, and just look at the words of Jesus, those same eyes that locked eyes with that woman, He's locked eyes with you, and He says, come to me, all ye who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And if you wake that up and you put that into your heart and you speak that to yourself in the morning, your only response, because that is such good news. He's going to give you and meet you wherever you need, wherever you want, and He's going to give that. Don't we all want rest? Don't we all want our life to feel at ease and at peace? And He says, I've got it. So you can be like Simon. His perspective is, I'm good enough and I can do this. Or you can be like this woman who never got a name, but all she did was empty her jar at the feet of Jesus in extreme worship and extreme generosity because Jesus' grace. So this year and whatever years are to come, I hope your perspective today, as the band's going to come and we're going to sing a song and worship, I hope your perspective today is not on what's going on around you, not how good you've been or how bad you've been. I hope your perspective is like this woman. And you come before Jesus daily, just like her, a sinner. We do sin for a living, right? Hers was called prostitution. Ours is called waking up. Right? We like to point out the ones that we can label, and we hide the ones that aren't labeled. Right? And she met Jesus, and he said, I'm not wanting to take something from you. You don't owe me anything. Just come, and I will meet those needs that you've been trying to get met all of your life. And when you live in that world, we empty the jar. You wake up and you're like, what can I do? Who can I tell about Jesus? What neighbor do I need to invite to church? What kids' class do I need to work in today? What toilet do I need to clean after church? What money do I need to give that I was going to spend on a boat? Let me spend it on somebody else. Maybe I can wear the same clothes this year and give clothes. Maybe I've got a closet full of things. Maybe I have a room in my house that I don't know who can live there. Maybe there's some kids that can come in. I don't know what your empty in the jar is, but I pray that you find it. Because God empties His grace on you every day. And you don't deserve it. I don't deserve it. We all don't deserve it. But He gives it. And that's why our only response is to give everything we have to Him. Let's empty our jars.
Once again, thank you for stopping by today. We'd love for you to be a part of our family at one of our services. You can find out all of our information at simplechurchtulsa.com, and we'd love to pray for you any way we can. So please message us, and we hope you have a great week.